Shalom and welcome to the Middle East Report. In this programme today we'll be discussing the work of the Jewish Agency and the vital work they are doing in bringing Jewish people home from all over the globe, known as Aliyah. Warm welcome to the programme. My guest today is Lea Golan from the Jewish Agency. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the programme, Lea. But can you actually give us a little bit of detail about your life growing up in Israel and how you became involved in Israel, that you are now the head of the Jewish Agency in the UK?
Good morning, Simon. First of all, it's a pleasure being here. Thank you for inviting me.
Pleasure.
I was born in Israel. My parents immigrated to Israel at 48. They escaped from Romania at 45, just after the Holocaust. And just before the communist regime got into the power, they tried to escape Romania. And they had to spend 3 years in different countries all over Europe, mainly in Italy. And then they decided they would like to find a place to live. They've been a young couple. And they had a huge debate whether to immigrate to the state, where my family, from my mother's side, immigrated and have done very well, while my father wanted very much to go to Israel because his family stayed in Israel. So a young couple couldn't decide, debated, and then they came to a decision that they will go to the port, and the first ship that will be there and will be available, they are going to take it. And that was my luck, that they arrived to Haifa rather than to Boston. They immigrated to Israel in a very difficult situation during the 48, which was quite a chaos at that time in Israel. They struggled, like everyone. And since then, I've been grown up in Israel, educated in Israel, and I think that I didn't really add any specific interest in world Jewry. My generation, we have been the Sabras. We have been educated to be the new generation of the Israelis, the new generation of the Jewish people. And only at age of 40, something like that, I had the opportunity to be exposed to world Jewry. I've been sent to England, to the UK, together with my family as an emissary for 2 to 3 years to deal with Aliyah, mainly of young people. And that was the first time that I really recognized why it's so important to be connected to world Jewry. And I learned to admire the people that are making such a decision to live comfortable life here in the UK, not like my parents that have been refugees after the Holocaust. And they are actually willing to change their life and to come to Israel and make Aliyah. And since then, my love and my understanding and my affiliation with world Jewry became my main desire. I worked for the Jewish Agency for 21 years in different positions. Most of my years has to do with Aliyah, but not only, with other parts as well, with the Israeli society as well. And a year ago, I arrived again to the UK together with my husband, now with our children, because they are already grown up. I have 3 grandchildren in Israel, and I'm very pleased to be here. And I'm still excited to meet any person that decides to make Aliyah to Israel.
That's a wonderful story, really heartwarming story. So thank you for sharing that with us, Lea. But can you share with us the work of the Jewish Agency? Because the Jewish Agency predates the modern state of Israel and was the organisation that became the vehicle for the modern state of Israel. So can you share a little bit about its history and also what are the functions within the Jewish Agency today?
In the history, really, the Jewish Agency was the collective voice of royal Jewry in order to create the Israel state. So having all the settlement in the Galil and the Negev, this is something that the World Jury, that so the Jewish Agency, have done, making sure that all the people that are looking to make Aliyah at those difficult years of 49, 52, 53, huge wave of Aliyah, that was the Jewish Agency. At 1990, when the Iron Curtain collapsed and we had the challenge of bringing from former Soviet Union many Jews, we have been dealing with bringing more than 1 million Jews to Israel from former Soviet Union. And that was the major work of the Jewish Agency. Recently, in the last few years, the role of the Jewish Agency has additional dimensions. Always Aliyah, bringing Jews from all over the world to Israel, will be the first priority and the main priority. But still, there are other important roles for the agency today, is how to connect World Jewry to Israel, because it's not obvious that connections will be as strong as it used to be in the past. My parent generation and myself do remember the Holocaust, do remember why it's important to have a state. The young generation today in the UK, in the United States, in Australia, Canada, don't always understand why it's so important to have a state. Therefore, the major role of the Jewish Agency today is to educate the young generation about Israel, to provide as many possible opportunities for young people to go and visit Israel, to see for themselves what is this country about. And obviously, when they decide that they would like to come to Israel to make Aliyah, to make life, then to facilitate the Aliyah, to help them with everything that is needed, and to make sure that their absorption will be as soft as possible. So the education piece, it's important part in order to ensure that that bonding will continue forever.
Excellent. So let's have a look now at the work of the Jewish Agency throughout Israel's 70 years as a nation reborn.
It's a miracle. We have a state. We have our own country. We have a prime minister. Everything we've dreamt of in the Jewish Agency came true. A country for the hundreds of thousands of Jews we've brought to our homeland. Dozens of towns and communities we established to house them. And infrastructure we developed and built. Oh, missed a spot there. But our work doesn't stop here. To the contrary, we've only just begun. We're going to bring hundreds of thousands more immigrants to our new state. In the 50s, we'll build residential havens for teens with nowhere else to go because youth are the future. We'll also help secure a safe future for Israel. Before the Six-Day War, when Israelis are uniting to face an overwhelming threat. There you go. We'll turn to our Jewish brothers and sisters from all around the world, and very soon, thousands of young Jews will fly to Israel from all over the globe and volunteer to the IDF. They'll help us succeed, together. World Jewry will continue to be there for us. They'll work with us to develop Israel's economy. Together, we'll build schools. Oh, congratulations. Community centers. What are you making there? Amazing, amazing. Health clinics for infants. Excuse me, sir, would you mind? Cultural centers in hundreds of communities. And then what? We'll help bring over the Jews who have been behind the Iron Curtain longing to join us. We'll help Israel bring over the Jews of Ethiopia in Operation Moses and Operation Solomon. Thousands will be flown from the desert to Israel. And now that we have a state, a flourishing society, and a strong economy, we continue to invest in you and you. Because in today's increasingly open world, with our people scattered everywhere, we're losing our connections. So, we create ways for Jews from all over the globe to meet and to get to know one another. We help children at risk, vulnerable populations. I know that one. There you go. and through our Israeli emissaries, who are working around the world, we combat the delegitimization of Israel. Oh, wow! 70 years gone by already. We've come a long way together. More than 3 million immigrants to Israel, more than 1,000 new communities, 1,500 educational and cultural institutions, billions in donations, and one country. A country whose history we're proud to be a part of. We helped build it, we helped develop it, and now we're strengthening its future. As long as we stay connected, there's nothing we can't accomplish. We are the Jewish Agency for Israel, every one of us, together.
And I'm sure you agree, a very inspirational video. Lea, it's quite incredible looking at the kind of history and the role that the Jewish Agency has played throughout the modern history of Israel, spanning over 70 years now. But on the topic of Aliyah, can you explain to us what Aliyah is and why Aliyah is so important and so vital to the Jewish state?
Aliyah is an expression, but basically it describes immigration. The word Aliyah is climbing, so it has a value. It's not just immigrating from one country to another, but you are fulfilling a very important stage in your life by climbing. This is Aliyah expression. When you speak about Israel today, I can't even start to imagine the success of recent Israel, the modern Israel, without people coming from all over the world. Basically, what makes Israel so unique, so creative, with entrepreneurs, with a strong civic society, with all the multicolors of the society, is really the fact that the social fabric of the Israeli society is combined by so many different people coming from all different parts of the world. You see today in Israel people from Western countries, from Eastern countries, from Asia, from Africa, from all over the world. And together, that combination makes a huge success. So the economical growth of Israel, the brains, the creativity is by having those great people coming and deciding that they would like to have their future connected to this special country.
And why do Jewish people make Aliyah to Israel? I mean, it sounds like a simple question, but I know it's not, because there's so many different factors involved. But what are some of the reasons why Jewish people decide to make Aliyah to Israel?
Academically, people relate to two major elements. If you will, with the research, people say about there are push factors and there are pull factors. The push factors, if you are facing a difficult situation in your country, whether it can be economical circumstances, whether it can be a growing anti-Semitism in your country. So these mostly are the push factors. You would like to escape. You would like to escape for something which is unpleasant to you or scaring or intimidating. And there are the pull factors. People that are coming to Israel not because they are living in a difficult situation, just because this is their desire. This is the way that they have been educated, that the place of the Jewish people is in the Jewish state. And they love Israel. They love the ability to live a free Jewish life. Don't have to worry too much about if they are religious, about kosher restaurant, whether to marry Jew. Everything is there for them. And for people, for me, I was born in Israel. So in a way, I take everything almost as granted, that it's comfortable Jewish life. But for Jews coming from other parts of the world, having that privilege, living in a Jewish state, for them, it's really something that they desire for. For young people, what we see that the major pull factors are the great opportunities when it comes to job opportunities in Israel. I think that the Israel economy today provides many exciting opportunities for entrepreneurs, whether it can be in high tech, obviously, in marketing, in anything that Israel is so advanced. And the fact that in Israel everything is done in a different way. Some people will say that this is not the most organized way, but this is a creativity. Everything is possible. The fact that you can one day do something, leave your army service, and in 1 year, 2 years, you can have your own startup, and so it's bubbling. If you ever visited Tel Aviv or Jerusalem or the big cities, you feel that energy. And for young people, that energy is a huge opportunity to come to Israel. The culture, it's flourishing culture, the great restaurants. Today you can have in Israel not only falafel and hummus. You have the most fine cuisine in Israel today, the beautiful weather, the seashores.
Absolutely.
You have everything.
Absolutely. Yes, almost the world's climate in such a small country, including mountains and beaches and everything else, which is good. When I think of historically some of the great moves of Aliyah, I think of particularly Operation Magic Carpet with the flight of the Yemens coming over to Israel, newly formed state. Think of all that over 800,000 Sephardi Jews from the Middle East, from the Arab world, who were forced out of their homes, came to Israel in the early 1950s. Then looking at the incredible Aliyah from Soviet Jewry, which after the collapse of the Berlin Wall in 1989, an Operation Solomon, exporting all the Jews from Ethiopia. These are incredible stories, but what is it like for a new immigrant who arrives in Israel to realise that they're in the Promised Land?
It depends. The first few months are the euphoria. They are so excited that they have done it. Still, newcomers, new olim, have to cope with a language which most of them don't have the opportunity to master. From Western countries, by the way, we do encourage olim to learn Hebrew before coming to Israel. That will ease their life. But they have to struggle with the language. They have to struggle with weather. In the summer, that beautiful weather might be a little bit hot. Different mentality, bureaucracy. So on one hand, there is a huge excitement of fulfilling a dream, your desire. On the other hand, there is a reality. And the major role of the Jewish Agency is really to prepare olim, not only to describe Israel as the exciting milk of honey country, but also the other side of the reality. Yes, it's exciting. Yes, it's a dream come true, but there is daily life. And we prepare olim by ensuring that they will have opportunity to learn Hebrew before coming. If people are looking to explore their opportunities when it comes to the job market, we put them in touch with potential employees. Just a week ago, we brought 4 high-tech companies here in order to introduce to the students what can be the next step in Israel. So we prepare, we send the CV in advance. We make the connections, even before coming, so they will know what to expect. Upon coming to Israel, the Jewish Agency is providing many youngsters a sort of soft landing. We have facilities, absorption centers, which is accommodation together with learning Hebrew, together with social life, together with preparation to the universities in Israel. So in that way, for the first 6 months, you don't have to worry about anything. You just can focus on learning Hebrew, on finding your friends, getting used to the climate, getting used to the commuting, getting used to everything. So it's step by step. So this is why we call it soft landing in Israel. And this is the major role of the Jewish Agency, to make sure that people that have done that choice will have the best possible opportunities to absorb in a very good way.
Excellent. So let's have a look at the work of the Jewish Agency.
Thank you.
This story is not about the past. It's about here and now. This story is not just about relatives. It's about a family, The story is not just about people. It's about a people. Our people. We speak many languages, but we also have a common tongue. We have many homes all around the world, but we also share a homeland. Israel is the greatest startup ever, and we are all its shareholders. We are forever connected to it, and Israel is connected to us. All those unique connections weave together to create our story. And the Jewish Agency for Israel is here to make sure that story continues. This is our mission. And these are the people that make it all happen. We're here to build unbreakable bonds. Everywhere in the world. Every time we are needed. Every one of us. Together.
A wonderful modern miracle. Lea, I just got some statistics that I want to read out to you, which are extraordinary, from Israel's Central Bureau of Statistics. Said recently that 3.5 million people have made Aliyah to Israel since 1948, and that makes up 42% of the total population. Israel's population today stands at 8,842,000 citizens. That's more than 10 times as many as the 806,000 at the time of the establishment of the Jewish state in 1948. Also in 2018, over 70 years after the Holocaust, the largest Jewish population lives in Israel, and this figure represents 43% of world Jewry. And also what I find extraordinary is there that at the time of the establishment of the State of Israel, only one city had more than 100,000 residents, Tel Aviv and Yaffo. Today, 14 cities have over 100,000 residents, 8 of them with more than 200,000. They are Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Yaffo, Haifa, read this out, Rishon LeZion, Petah Tikva, Ashdod, Netanya, Beersheba, which is incredible, as well as Israel's capital, Jerusalem, has 882,700 residents, represents 10% of the population. Really bringing scriptures like Ezekiel 36 verse 10 alive. And how extraordinary is it to be working in this project, knowing that what you're actually seeing is the fulfillment of ancient biblical prophecies mentioned from the prophets thousands of years ago, and essentially you're doing God's work in bringing the Jewish people home?
It's a huge privilege. I work for as I told you, I work for the Jewish Agency quite a long period, and every day, just every day, I'm waking up thinking what I have to do today, and I'm excited about it. It's not obvious that a professional has such a huge privilege to be part of something much bigger, and the fact that I have the opportunity to be a piece in the big picture, it's amazing. It's behind any possible words.
And the fact that Israel, the whole story of Israel is one of pioneers. I know that prior to the State of Israel, there's always been a Jewish presence in Jerusalem. There's always been a small population in the nation of Israel. But when we see the Jewish people come from the four corners of the earth, and to see that land that was once desert now bloom, and to see these cities being rebuilt and heavily populated, quite incredible from where Israel was 70 years ago, isn't it?
Yes, I just would like to share with you a funny story. I used to be a kibbutz member. You know what kibbutz is?
Of course, yes.
I used to be a member of kibbutz Mishmar Negev. It's in the south. And I remember that one day someone came and said, very smart. I said, what is so smart? He said, how you managed to put the kibbutz in such a flourish area with so many green parts, etc. I say, that wasn't the reality. It was absolutely dry and yellow, only due to the work of the pioneers and the grandparents and everyone that came to Israel and worked the land. It's now green and flourishing, etc. So yes, it's in a way, it's a miracle, but it's a miracle that has been achieved by sweat and hard work of many, many people that through this work really fulfilled the dream of creating the new country, and of course with the support of different Christian communities all over the world were Jewry. So that joint effort, the huge support from all over the world, together with the devotion and the determination to make this country strive and successful, I think that that is the formula that created that miracle.
Fantastic. I mean, I suppose when you actually think of a nation like Israel having to absorb over 1 million Jewish people from the former Soviet Union after the collapse of the Berlin Wall, how much was that a strain and a struggle for the state to suddenly, within a couple of years, to absorb over 1 million Jewish people?
It was a challenging period, but I need to say that even for a moment, no one questioned if this is the right move. It was clear from every part of the society that this is a challenge that all we should face. And even if that means that people have to compromise, Israelis and the newcomers as well, to compromise and for a while on the living standard, economic, etc., it was a deep understanding that this is a must. There is no other choice, no other alternative. The same way it was with the Ethiopian Olim, and the same way any wave of Aliyah, whether it's small or big, there is never going to be a question. Wherever Jews are all over the world, if they will need or want to come to Israel, that never will be an issue.
Absolutely. And also within Israel's constitution, isn't it, that Jewish people have the right to make Aliyah to Israel?
The law of return.
And the law of return. How important is that law of return, and how much does that make a difference in terms of protecting vulnerable Jewish communities around the world facing anti-Semitism?
The law of return, first of all, was a symbol that this is not just the country of the citizens. When the law of return was defined, the ideology behind it was that Israel, it's not just the country of the people that are right now there, but the stakeholders are Jews all over the world. And the definition, who is entitled to make Aliyah, anyone that can prove that his grandfather or grandmother was Jew is entitled to make Aliyah, to immigrate to Israel. So that philosophy is very important, and from the Israelis' point of view, they do understand that the role of world Jewry, a stakeholder of Israel, it's not a regular scenario. Here in the UK, citizenship, this country belongs to the people that lives here. Israel belongs not only to people that live in Israel, but people that will potentially come to Israel. And therefore, we appreciate any say of royal Jewry. Therefore, the Jewish Agency provide opportunity for the global Jewish leaders to define from time to time what is a major challenge that the Jewish people as global, as collective, are facing. And their say of royal Jewry about what should be done in Israel, whether Israel should be focusing on vulnerable population, elderly, etc., is understood because they have a share as well. It's not me as was born there and live there, but everyone has a share, everyone is entitled to have a say.
Absolutely. So if I take, for example, American Jewry at the moment, which is quite a complicated situation regarding Israel, because we find that the vast majority of American Jewry are very comfortable in the States. They are not necessarily supportive of President Trump, despite the fact that he's recognised Israeli sovereignty over Jerusalem, the fact he's moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and has geared up his whole foreign policy, and mainly because of Christian Zionists in his cabinet are pushing the United States to really, really stand with Israel. And there seems to be a disconnect from that from American Jewry in Israel. Isn't the great danger then that there could be a polarisation effect between Israel and Jewish communities across the world? And what do you do to build those strong relationships so that they're strong?
There is always a threat of being disconnected. Disconnection can become because of criticism of a certain policy of the government. It can be because of different religious stream within Judaism. The Reform and the conservative streams in the United States feel that sometimes they are not as welcome as they should. So this danger or this threat, it's the major threat that world Jewry is facing today. And the major role of the Jewish Agency is really to make sure that even if people ask criticism, that's fine. I have criticism as well. But there should be a definition a distinction between criticizing certain policy. It can be a political policy about any element in the Israeli life, and the fact that we would love to continue our connection, the fact that we are part of one nation. So yes, we have disagreement. We have different points of view, but we are still connected. So the major challenge today is to find how to connect people despite the fact that we have a different point of view. It's more than normal to have a different point of view. From any mountain, you see different view. So I don't have a doubt that if you live in Tel Aviv, you have a certain point of view. If you live in New York, you have a different one. It's normal. So this is something that we found that the best way to connect people is by enabling as many young Jews to come to Israel, to explore it, not to see it only through the romantic point of view of milk and honey, but to see the reality, the complication, the different dimension of the Israeli society, the good and the less good things. And we feel that after being in Israel, being exposed to the reality, most of the young people fell in love. And then they can love the country and they can criticize it. You know, sometimes criticizing comes because you are caring. So I'm not intimidated by criticism. I'm more intimidated by not being interested and say, okay, it doesn't belong to me, I don't care. So our major role is really to make sure that people will care, will be connected and they will care.
So Lea, can you ask for a Jewish person possibly watching this program who has been inspired by what you've said today and would like to make Aliyah, what is the process that takes place?
Before making Aliyah, the most important thing is really to prepare, to start learning Hebrew if it's possible, coming to the Aliyah offices all over the world and get the most friendly process advice, making sure that your documents are prepared in order to ease your landing later on in Israel. If you are still working, to find what are your job opportunities in Israel, to send your CV in a way that Israelis will be able to read it. You know, in every country, the way that you write your CV is different. So our professionals at the Jewish Agency are preparing the Olim, how to write a CV, how to be interviewed, how to negotiate. Again, even negotiation about your salary, etc., it's different from every country. So as well as you will be prepared, easy will be your Aliyah. My message is mainly to the young people. Young people sometimes feel that it's either or, that if they decide to make Aliyah, they are burning all the bridges. And my perspective is different. Try it. Give yourself an opportunity to try the life in Israel. See how exciting opportunities are waiting for you. If for some reason then you will decide that you can't stay, you don't want to stay, at least you tried. Absolutely. And it's easy to try when you are young, when you don't have 3 kids and a mortgage. Just try it. And what we see that mainly most of our Olim are either young or parents that are following the kids afterwards to Israel. But even for the middle age, we have many opportunities, job opportunities to help people to make Aliyah.
Excellent, excellent. We're going to go to another clip now, which is, I think, very important. This one says, European Jews seeing the rise in anti-Semitism from the right and from the left.
It's coming from the left and from the right. European Jews are trying to defend themselves and defend Israel. On Wednesday, a delegation of European rabbis visited Israel's parliament to strategize with lawmakers about fighting a dramatic rise in anti-Semitism. Rule number 1, anti-Semites don't care about any Jew's personal level of observance, so all Jews, secular, Orthodox, or in between, are in the fight together.
We are one people, no matter what differences we have, the way how to pray, the way how we eat, the way how we dress, but we all are Jewish.
Some European Jews, like those in Great Britain, are dealing with anti-Semitism from the left, which is often veiled as anti-Israel or anti-Zionist rhetoric. Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn has found himself and his party awash in charges of anti-Semitism. Yet, due to factors like Brexit, Corbyn's Labour is now leading in the polls, and it has British Jews on edge.
We feel that Jeremy Corbyn and his views represents an extreme at the margins of British society. We're worried that it's coming into the centre like this. Nevertheless, we do feel that it's possible to mobilise a public opinion in accordance with that which is sane and central.
Other European Jews are fighting off anti-Semites on the right. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has controversially allied himself with nationalistic governments like Hungary, Poland, and Austria, all of which have concerning elements of anti-Semitism within them. In fact, Israel is still boycotting Austria's Freedom Party, despite the junior coalition partner holding a number of key positions in Vienna. Jewish communities say they've been assured such boycotts will continue until those Jews feel safe at home.
Once some Jews will start to support them, it's like we gave our approval. We got very strong statements yesterday from President Rivlin, from the head of the Knesset, Yuli Edelstein and others, that as long as the local Jewish community is not going to deal with those parties, Israel is not going to deal with these parties either.
Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz went so far as to host an anti-Semitism conference on Wednesday, in part to allay Israel's worries. Still, the rabbis visiting Jerusalem this week say they and their congregations have stuck their necks out to defend Israel. And even as they train to fight off the enemies at their doors, they expect the Israeli government to use its European influence to assure they are protected. Mike Wagenheim, I-24 News.
A good report on what is extremely alarming and very troubling, and that is the rise of Jew hatred, not only in Europe but also in the United States. It seems when it comes to Jew hatred, Leah, it goes in waves, and currently we are experiencing the biggest wave of anti-Semitism really since the fascism of the 1930s and the rise of Hitler and Nazism in the 30s and 40s, and then to extent, and we saw the absolutely horrific consequences of this with the Holocaust as well. So how much is the rise of global anti-Semitism playing its role in Jewish people deciding to make Aliyah?
Making Aliyah, it's never a decision that is made only by one element. First of all, everyone should be very much concerned about anti-Semitism, and we never should underestimate. Saying that one of the tendencies for the humans say, oh, it's not too bad, oh, it might be. We shouldn't underestimate, especially bearing in mind the history. But a decision to make Aliyah, it's never based on one element, on one dimension. A decision to immigrate, to make Aliyah, it's mainly because of several elements together. No doubt that, that if someone doesn't feel that he is secured anymore, he doesn't feel that he can be a proud Jew wherever he lives, there definitely will be part of the push factor that I related earlier. But again, we would love every Jew to live safe where he is, and we appreciate immensely those that are deciding to make Aliyah to Israel. And by living in the Jewish state, making sure that every Jew all over the world will feel as safe as possible.
And sadly, in Europe, we're living in very troubling times. I spent a lot of time in Brussels. Also, did a documentary in Paris, in France, called A Jew Hatred, a lesson from history, in which I had the opportunity to interview Jewish leaders in France and also in Belgium. And this came after the attacks on the Charlie Hebdo attack and the attack on the Jewish kosher supermarket back in 2015 and the attack on the Jewish museum in Brussels. And what becomes alarming is the sense that these very precious Jewish communities, which are an integral part of European society, now feel so much under threat. The fact that the Jewish Museum in Brussels is guarded by two Belgian paratroopers with machine guns. We see that Jewish children going to school, it's almost like an armed fortress. So there has to be a point where, and also Jewish people feel like they're being attacked and their nations are doing nothing to really protect them from the rise of anti-Semitism. And therefore, under those circumstances, doesn't Israel then become the solution, that Israel is the solution to anti-Semitism?
Israel, no doubt. When we go back to Herzl, the reason why Herzl thought about, had this vision about a state, a Jewish state, was because of anti-Semitism. He felt that the only solution to anti-Semitism will be if the Jewish people, the Jewish nation, will have the state like any other nation all over the world. So no doubt from my point of view that this is a solution. On the other hand, I see that some powers, anti-Semitic powers, try to describe their hate not to Jewish people, but to the state. And in the end of the day, it's the same. The artificial definition between, oh, we like the Jew, but we don't like Israel, it's not real. Israel has a right to exist like any other country, and one of the modern expressions of anti-Semitism is really the double standard, the delegitimization, dehumanization, and those three double are actually the new version of anti-Semitism. And we don't have to be confused. Israel has a right to exist. And I think that, I believe that what you are doing in your work and the support that we are getting from Christian communities all over the world, it's a very important way to fight back and to explore other sides of the Israeli today as a modern democracy, striving democracy, and it's very important. So I appreciate immensely your support and the support of all the Christian communities all over the world.
No, we love Israel, we love the Jewish people, and you're part of our heritage, and so we owe you everything. We owe you everything because you've given us the Word of God, you've given us the law of Moses, the prophets, and even as we consider our own Messiah, who we worship, Yeshua HaMashiach. So big thanks to the Jewish people and the nation of Israel, and that comes from the heart. So it's very important. But Lea, I just want to discuss one thing which I think is very important here, particularly as we're seeing this global rise of anti-Semitism coming in different forms, whether it's from the more traditional far right or whether it's coming from the left that attacks Israel, that calls Israel a racist endeavor, that Israel has no right to exist as a state. All these are termed as definitions of anti-Semitism. But when we see a political party, Her Majesty's opposition, the Labour Party, led by Jeremy Corbyn, who can't even mention the word Israel, and there are almost weekly cases of accusations of anti-Semitism within his party. His own Jewish members of parliament feel really uncomfortable, and when you have a headline such as all the three Jewish newspapers last summer said that Jeremy Corbyn poses an existential threat, and where we hear reports that if he comes to power, said a third of Jewish people living in this country, which are an integral part of this country, would make Aliyah. Surely that represents a sad state of affairs, isn't it?
It's sad period for world Jewry not to feel that they are secured here anymore. I'm sure that many British Jews are determined to stay and to fight and to make sure that Britain will stay a supportive country to Israel, because in the end of the day, there are great connections between Britain and Israel when it comes to commercial, when it comes to everything. So the fact that today there is current bad wind, I would say, it's a shame. But I'm sure that many good members of this community will fight and will make sure that the relationship between the UK, the British community and Israel will stay as good as it used to be in the past. Basically, Israel owes a lot to Britain. Without Balfour Declaration, we wouldn't have a state. So yes, there is a miracle, but Britain has a lot of rights in the fact that Israel state exists.
We have about 6 minutes towards the end of the programme. I have two very important questions I want to ask. The first one is, if the current level of Jew hatred around the world continues, and we find that the Jewish communities in Europe become even more threatened and targeted, which is certainly not within the realms of possibility, does the Jewish Agency have a plan to bring a large number of Jewish people home from places in Europe? And can you share what you can share on that?
The Jewish Agency is always prepared to bring any Jew, wherever he exists. It doesn't necessarily have to be from Europe. I was involved in bringing 6 elderly people from Iraq, from Baghdad during the war, and we sent a special plane to bring them. So I'm not saying that this is the same situation, but every Jew, wherever he stays, in any age, any medical, we will be there in order to ensure that he will find his place in Israel. So no doubt that we are prepared. We are prepared to ensure that everyone that would like to find out whether he's eligible to make Aliyah will be able to do it in the most professional and easy way. And sometimes we say, people, you know, find if you are eligible, just in case. Prepare your papers, prepare yourself. If one day you will decide to make Aliyah, everything will be ready. But no doubt, and this is something that I can assure you from my history, I worked many years in Latin America, in Ethiopia, in Morocco, in any other part of the world. When there is a Jew in need, the Jewish Agency, with your support, with all World Jewry support, will be there in order to make sure that they will be able to come to Israel.
Excellent. And what role can our Christian viewers play in supporting the Jewish Agency and the absolutely vital work that you're doing in terms of bringing the Jewish people home so that they can make Aliyah to Israel?
The Jewish Agency benefit from a huge support of Christian communities all over the world. Here in the UK, we are working very closely with Ebenezer. In my previous shlichut, in 1994, we had a joint operation. We went to Armenia to rescue Jews during the war in Yerevan. So your support, your ability to be with us and help us to bring Jews is highly appreciated. Not only because of the practical element, but the moral support is important and appreciated immensely. So, and I think that the fact that any Christian that believes that Jews should live in Israel, he can support us by any effort that he is doing is directed directly to the Ole, and then they can come to Israel and have a soft landing as it should be.
Excellent. Lea, I just firstly want to thank you for the incredible work that you are doing through the Jewish Agency here in the UK, and the issue of Aliyah is so important because it's a lifeline for the Jewish people. It's like an insurance policy. So if the situation regarding the rise of anti-Semitism becomes worse, the Jewish people have that incredible reassurance that there is a state, there is a home, and there is a nation that will look after them. And this is something that's very special because the Jewish people haven't had this for 2,000 years, have they?
Indeed. This is a miracle, and today we are Hanukkah. This is a time of miracles, and the fact that I can sit here in front of you and tell you there is no Jew in the world that can't be assured that if and when he will decide to immigrate to Israel, he will be hugged, he will be welcomed, and we will be more than happy to join us.
Fantastic. And also, just in the closing moments of the programme, according to the figures you sent me here, there's something like 29,000 Jewish people from all over the world who made Aliyah. Is that why Israel's so successful? Because of the different cultures and the fact that Jewish people come to Israel and it's a melting pot for different cultures and different nations, despite the fact that everyone's Jewish?
This year we are going to have the same amount of people, more or less. There is a growing numbers of immigrants from Ukraine, from Russia that are coming. And why it's so successful? Because the high motivation from people that are coming to Israel to make it, and from the support, great support system that is provided. I don't think that there is any country on earth that provides that support system to newcomers in the same way that Israel is relating to Aliyah. It's one of the major values in Israel.
Excellent. Lea, I just want to thank you so much for being my guest on today's Middle East Report, and thank you so much for sharing your inspirational stories and the incredible work that you're doing in helping the Jewish people make Aliyah.
Thank you, Simon. It was a pleasure.
And I just want to thank you for watching today's programme. We've learned about Aliyah and the important work of the Jewish Agency in bringing the Jewish people home from the four corners of the earth in fulfilment of biblical prophecy, which is absolutely incredible. So thank you for watching today's Middle East Report.
Left it all to be with you. Distant dreams have now come true. Walk the streets of legends told. We've come home. We've come home. We've come home. And we'll never stand alone. After 2,000 years, we are home. Not a native of this land. Bring me up and take my hand. Sapphire seas and golden sand, a place called home. We've come home, we've come home to a land of our own. After 2,000 years, we are home. זאת ארצי מולדתי, על אדמתי צעדתי, עברי עתידי, זה ביתי.